Okay, I think we are live. So it took about 5 minutes for me to get that all set up. The lighting, there's a dark and a light. It's like the light side and the dark side of my face. Okay, I'm gonna let some people show up here. I know it takes a minute to get over. And a lot do come over, actually. I know we have 500 or 600 on the other one, and we usually get 100 here. But I appreciate people coming over. I'm going to let people show up. Oh, start off with a down thumb. No, that's too bad. Hello, Cats Meow, Little Miss Sunshine. Thanks for coming over. Very cool. There's everybody. Yeah, say where you're from. Jemima, hi from Australia. Jen W from Maine, hello. Beth Lukens, Donnie to the max. East Texas. Ooh, I like Texas. Lorraine Black, Amy Joe, Kelly Willis, Fairy Hedgehog, Jean, from South Carolina. Awesome. Cape Cod, also Kelly. Very cool. So we'll let some people show up here. Deb, hello. And this is going to be a fun one because I have the little video upload from the ones that you've seen it, but it's just seeing this presentation again is really interesting. It was unique. I haven't been surprised in a while, in many years actually, and seeing this, I was just kind of blown away actually. And there's a couple things that made it unique. One is the size, obviously. This is so much bigger. I have seen a couple of these in the last 10 years, not even close to this size. How firm it was. It did not feel like it was fluid filled at all. It was just so hard. It made it feel like it was possibly a lipoma, or it was just really packed with like keratin, dead skin cells, things like that. Hello, Claudine and Deltas from Brisbane, Australia. A lot of Australians. I realize a lot of people in the States may be working, but they're going to see this later. They'll pop on, which is totally cool. So, yeah, that's what made it unique. The last thing was the two pockets of fluid that were both different colors. That one was more yellow and the other was kind of a brown. And if you really look close at and I'll link the video in this as well at the end, the actual video of the procedure, was the deep one, and had this kind of shiny, you could see, it's what we see in fat tissue actually. It almost looks oily. And that just tells us kind of where it was likely derived from. But I'll see that when I'm burning and cauterizing fat too. It has that kind of oily shimmer to it. And it was down in fat tissue down in there. So I'm just going to play the video. It's just a minute just so you can see that initial presentation. And then we're going to talk about that a little bit. And I'm going to answer some questions. Just a sec. Let me shrink myself down here. There we go. Very interesting. And let me push play. Okay guys, Mr. Popsy here. We have quite a large growth on the lower back, and we can see this could be a lipoma, this could be a cyst. There's a lot of things it could be. One thing it's amazing because it is quite a growth. You can see here that there is a growth on a growth. So it's kind of like a cyst that grew a cyst, or a lipoma that grew a lipoma. Now, it doesn't feel very deep. I can get under it here, so that's usually a cyst that does that. But we're going to get her all numbed up. We're going to kind of mark the outline of it. I am going to do a wedge cut just around where this pooching out is to try and make her scar a little smaller. And then that will, minimize that, and then we'll kind of be able to see what's in there, how it's connected, do a little drainage, and push everything out. If it's something, like a lipoma, sometimes they can have pretty deep attachments. We'll see. We'll kind of know once we start cutting. But we'll get her all numbed up and ready to go in just a minute. Okay. So that was just a nice, quick little introduction of what that looked like when I first saw it, which was definitely interesting. So let's talk a little bit about nodular hydradenomas. They're more common in females. Oh, thank you for the super chat. Thank you so much. Let me see. There we go. From Amber McMahon. I really appreciate that. Be very hot in Australia today. I hope you stay cool. Oh, I see. I was missing my comments were not going down. So now I see some people from streaming to my television. Probably common knowledge. Yes. Sorry. Now I'm seeing all these. Very cool. Sorry, I was missing some of your comments there because it wasn't scrolling. So nodular hydradenomas, more common in females. She was in her 4th to 5th decade, which is when they usually come up. There's no known risk factors, and it's any group of people. It doesn't matter race. It's just females are more. It's more common, and it's rare, and it's even more rare for it to be malignant, which it can be. There are some malignant ones. So that just goes further to say, always send out. If you're in the business of taking things off people's skin, you always have to send it out, send it to Path, because it's rare, but I have had some things that look like cysts that were actually cystic squamous cell carcinomas. So you can be surprised for sure. This one, these are usually multilobular tumors, and it had the one on top of the other. It did have that collagenous pseudo capsule, which is what, when I got in, I could see as like a very thin capsule, very different. I hadn't, even on the small ones that I had removed in the past, they were kind of bubbled up like the one on the surface. So it was almost just like a scrape. You scrape them off, you send out that whole thing. I didn't have to deal with the, what was inside or anything like that. I just kind of removed them as one ball and sent the whole ball away. So one thing, they have solid and cystic portions to them. So that you could see that kind of glob of proteins that were in there in the video that came out, and what made me think of a teratoma. It almost looked like a little fetus, and the way that it was globbed together, it was just interesting. Because it was kind of attached but had loose bits on it. It looked like there was different colors and different densities of the tissue that's in there, which is what happens with these. It's just, you don't ever, on these small ones, it might just be a couple little things that look like, 1 millimeter globules. This was a big growth inside the growth. It was like 2 of them, actually. And so, they are very deep. And the bigger they are, the deeper they can go. A lot of people ask, why didn't you remove that? Like try to get that pseudo membrane or pseudo capsule that was in there. And the reason was it went all the way through the fat, almost down or to the muscle. And if I get down there and I start snipping and pulling away and I hit a vessel that's like on the muscle or close to the muscle, I can't really anesthetize that. So that makes it difficult for me to be able to stop the bleeder. So when you're getting deep like that, you want to know your landmarks, where you're at, and what are your limitations. And that was definitely, if it was a cyst, I could have pressed everything out, which would have made the sac kind of squish up towards the surface. Then I could just trim the fat tissue away from it. It would have been easy to remove, even on a big one. But on the others, something like this, it's attached kind of that lining in there. And I've read some about them after doing it, that some can grow back, and some since it's such a thin capsule or membrane, kind of dissolves or gets broken down once everything's drained and you remove those. Thank you, Terry Kibler. I appreciate it. Let me get down. See, hello from South Korea. Very cool. Kelbell, I know. They're not, the notifications don't go out. They don't really like having me here. It's kind of weird to be a part of something where the app just doesn't like you, and I've written to them where they say, we don't shadow ban, and shadow banning is when if you put in Mr. POPZ, it should auto populate. Pops it does not do that for me here. And I told them about that. Like, no, that doesn't. I'm like, yeah, it does. I try to do it. I try to look it up, and they are shadow banning me, which means you have to spell me just right or you won't find me, which is unfortunate. But, what are you going to do? It's today's world that we're living in. So, yes, with these tumors, I want to just talk about, you have the skin and then you have the adnexa. And adnexal tumors are tumors that derive from the adnexa. What's the adnexa? Is hair, nails, sebaceous glands, sweat glands, mammary glands, kind of the things that are in the skin and involved in the skin. And apocrine glands and eccrine glands as well. And these actually derive from apocrine or eccrine. That's what they come from, which those are glands that are secretory. They secrete. That's why these are fluid filled. And if they're apocrine, they call it a clear cell hidradenoma. If they come from eccrine differentiation, they're called a poroid hidradenoma. And you don't need to know that for a test, but I do. So those you can't really differentiate just from looking at them, though. You really have to put them under a microscope to know that. Hello, Heather Excel. Thank you for being here. Very cool that everybody's showing up. So as far as, with these different types of tumors and where they come from, it doesn't matter too much as far as removing them. It's kind of like with basal cells and squamous cell carcinomas. We have a basal layer of the skin, a squamous layer of the skin. We have melanocytes that make up our moles. These are things that are in the layers of the skin or what's in the skin. And melanoma comes from melanocytes. Squamous cell carcinoma comes from squamous atypical cells, and basal cells, carcinomas come from the basal layer. So it's just kind of telling you where it's coming from. But very interesting growth. And, this came up relatively quick for that size. It came up in 2 years. I just can't imagine. They do ulcerate commonly. They get so filled that the skin thins out, which you can see her skin, the vein that was right over the top. They can get so thin they pop. And I could only imagine if she would have been in a car or a bus or, with people and she leans back and that thing would have popped. It would have felt like, if she was on her way to work or something, it would have just been so horrible for her. So it was great to get that out. Oh, I also want to mention right after I get off here, I have a brand new video. The ones that are my VIPs, I just did a little picture to show you what it looks like. That's coming right after this. It's a 2-for-1 special. It's a pretty good pilar cyst with another small one about an inch away. And I actually push it through to the initial cut I make on the bigger one. But it's a little difficult because I got to dig for it. So you'll see it's kind of interesting that you can kind of push them around like that. So that's a good video coming right now. Let's see here. What causes seborrheic dermatitis? Yes. Good question. It's the most common thing I see. Seborrheic dermatitis is caused by Malassezia or Pityrosporum, which are skin flora yeast that we all have. And it overgrows due to many things. Sometimes hormone fluctuations, sometimes hormone fluctuations that cause sebum or oil production, stress, if you're not sleeping well and your immune system isn't at its best, or you've been sick and you're fighting something, your immune system is modified so it can't keep the skin flora in a good balance and it tends to overgrow. Bacterial folliculitis is kind of the other side of that, where you have skin flora bacteria that can overgrow and cause a pimple-like rash, and then, sebderm. Kind of the same idea that what happens in the vagina. You take an antibiotic, it kills good bacteria, and you get a yeast infection. So same idea, it's just on the skin. And these, it's a beautiful day, Arlene, for sure, in sunny California. Finally, we've been raining so much. Those things happen where things get thrown off balance, and then you got to get them back to balance. And, eating a healthy diet, exercising regularly, getting a good night's sleep, all those things help your body, keep it at its peak. But there's always something that can throw it off, whether you have another illness you're dealing with, lupus, something, and then these things tend to flare. But that's one of the most common questions I get. So pretty much about hidradenomas, surgical removal is usually the treatment, and when they can regrow if you don't get all of it. Most surgery, if it does regrow, is sometimes indicated, where they can make a cut and then look for tissue that is involved, like that pseudomembrane or pseudocapsule that can be kind of thin. They can stain and tell if they got it all or not. But usually just a wide excision would get it. So I'm going to watch this patient. I would say there's probably a 50% chance this one will come back. It might take a long time, but if it does, now if I can get it kind of not as big and we can not have to go as deep, we might be able to get it all out for her if it tries to regrow. So that's good. And, going forward, it helped her a lot. She was so thankful. I just wanted to touch on just a couple common questions right now. What is a PA? A lot of you know, but there's a lot of people outside the United States where they don't utilize physician associates or physician assistants. And so that's a very common question. I have a lot of new people always coming on. So I do like to, every now and then pop in. It's a master's degree, master's level science degree in medicine. And we go, as opposed to nurse practitioners who tend to specialize in kind of one facet, like they get their nursing degree, then they might specialize in primary care, or psych, or they just go on one vector a lot of times, and then they're specialized in that, and that's all they can do. As a physician assistant or physician associate, we do the medical model. So we have a year of didactic, which is studying and just taking tests, and then the next year is our rotations. And doctors are usually doing 3-month rotations, and we do, I think it was 11 1-month rotations. And that's, general surgery, pediatrics, geriatrics, primary care, specialties like orthopedics, neurology, dermatology. So you had some leeway if you wanted to pick a couple specialties, and you had things that you had to do. So that's our, when we come up, once you get out, and a lot of them are kind of lean or push heavily towards a primary care, because they were trying to utilize PAs as a primary care, extenders. But, you can kind of make your own destiny on that. But when you come out, it is really, it's up to you to get trained in what you want to do. So it's kind of nice because you get out there, and if you find a physician that wants to train you, which they usually need to, because you're only getting a month and all these subspecialties, but you're getting paid as you get trained. So I knew I wanted to go into dermatology. I went into it right after I got out, and I've been in it for almost 15 years now, and I've been trained by some of the best derms that are in this area, and great surgeons. And I took notes, and really I they're like, do you want to learn this, or do you want to do this? I was like, I want to learn it all. Let's go. Lasers and closures and flap closures and, excisions and all of it, fillers and clinical derm. So I went that route and have been on it. And, you can always learn something new every day in medicine, which is nice. So that was my training, because a lot of people have asked, how is he allowed to do surgery? And in the state of California, and for the most part, I think across the United States, you're approved to do what you've been trained in if your physician does it. So outside of Mohs surgery, we don't do Mohs surgery. That is specific for a Mohs surgeon. But for the most part, most of the other things that are done, certain lasers too, I believe, unless you've been trained in it, but you got to do a little bit extra. So yes. And who records for me? I see that a lot. It is my medical assistants, and my medical assistants are new all the time. We have the practice I'm in, I think, has 13 offices or 14 offices. We have a ton of offices. I go to 2 of them. And so, there's other providers that go back and forth as well that come from other offices. So they're moving medical assistants around a lot. They do try to keep like 2 of my mains with me most of the time, but they sometimes switch, or, they're calling out. It's very common for me each month to be working with somebody I've never worked with before. So that's why you'll see me kind of sometimes saying, oh yeah, could you dab there or cut here? And I'm like, oh, hold on one sec, because it's the first time I'm doing a surgery with them a lot of times. Most of them are younger people, so they're pretty good at recording and pretty good with, cameras or iPhones. And so that makes it a little easier. But I see a lot of people are like, what? Why is that blurry? You know, sometimes the camera, when it gets onto my hand and then when it goes back to the skin, it takes a second. You have to tap. I try to let them know that, but it's kind of a learning curve. So that's why some of my videos will be blurry here and there, or there will be some issues sometimes. But for the most part, I think we get through it all okay. And then, another question I'm getting is sunblock. Is it reef safe? That is in sunblock that I recommend. A couple things about that. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, he's selling out, whatever. I get 3 to 5 advertisement offers a day for about 15 months. And I mean, every day I have an email is just covered with, please, here's our, sending you free stuff, all of this. I don't even have time to keep up with it. I don't, I haven't done any of those. It's thousands. What I wanted to do is stuff that I really like and that I use myself. And that's the first one I reached out to. And a lot of people are like, oh, he's just taking money. They give me a small percentage of sales, which I think is great. And it's called an affiliate deal. And that's what's going to help us get to getting somebody to edit someday, and get some help. So I'm not doing it all on my own. But the question was reef safe. For the most part, they recommend zinc oxide or titanium dioxide for reefs. Those are the mineral barrier blockers. It is avobenzone and octocrylene and benzenes, some of these other chemicals that are man-made in sunblocks that tend to break down the reef. So the one caveat of that is that the micronized zinc, they're saying can be absorbed, or they're finding that it's possible that it's absorbed. So the micronized zinc, they don't really say are full reef safe, and this is a micronized zinc. But what I would say to that is, this is not something that you would take and slather all over your whole body at the beach. This is something that is a very nice light cream for daily use, for you driving in your car and just getting out, daily and putting on each morning. It's not something that, it's only 100 mLs. It's a decent amount, but, it's made for a small area. So if you're going to go to the beach, I would recommend just getting a big, don't pay the extra money for that micronized zinc. Just get a zinc oxide. It might be thick, but that's what you want when you're out at the beach with water reflecting. And you can get the big tubs, and there's lots of different brands. They're all pretty much the same when you get into the non-micronized. Where you really pay the extra 30 or 50 or even sometimes 80 or $100 is because they took the time to really make the molecule small and make what it's being held in, the cream or lotion, amazing. So you don't feel it when you put it on daily. It feels good in the morning when you get out. It has antioxidants in it, coenzyme Q10, and things to repair DNA repairsomes, which actually repair UV damage. This is a cream that is good for your skin, and it's a sunblock. So that was a common question I was seeing. I was seeing in the comment section, people were kind of going back and forth, and I was like, I wanted to address that. And it's important because, utilization of what you're putting on your skin and when you're putting it on, if you're using a retinoid at nighttime, you want to take into account the strength, the sensitivity, why you're using it. And that's so important. And so for a daily, I think this is an amazing sunblock. For going to the ocean, especially where there might be a reef, I probably wouldn't take it on that day. I would get something that's bigger that you can cover most of your body if you're going to be out there. So that's the answer on that. Let me see. I know there was a couple questions here that just came up as I was just blabbering on. Let me see if I missed any. Yeah, Addie, bring her up, say hi. Oh. Unexpected and scary while operating. I thought I saw a question. Well, if you see with the Hidradenoma we're talking about, I did not expect that much fluid. Obviously, I would have been covered up. And so I definitely didn't expect that. Baby girl's here. Come here. You want to say hi? Look at this one. She just got home from school. Mrs. Popsit's here. Oh my goodness. Look at all these curls. Goodness. Did you have a good day at school?
Yeah.
Was it so much fun?
Yeah.
Oh, this is the best part of my day when she comes home and I get my snuggles.
Yeah.
I love you so much.
You got no hair.
I know. I got no hair. You got all the hair, you lucky.
And
You say
Mama.
hi. Can you blow a kiss? Mwah. All right. Go play with mommy, okay? Best part when she gets home. So fun. So yeah, unexpected, definitely scary, not so much. Even somebody asked me the other day, have you hit big arteries? And I've hit a decent sized artery on the scalp and on the face. I think in 15 years, I've only, you can usually cauterize, it'll stop it, but there is pretty good back pressure on arteries, so it can pop off that little scab that you make with the cautery pin. So sometimes you'll do like a little loop, kind of a figure 8 stitch that will just kind of tie it down. And it's like a purse string. You just cinch it. And it's tough because when it's bleeding like crazy to get that in there, sometimes you can't see so well. So having a good medical assistant or knowing what to tell them, like if you cut one here, push around it until you find where it's coming in from. And then you can just have them go back an inch and hold the artery off. And then you can put your suture in instead of trying to tie it while it's squirting blood all over the place. So that can be unexpected sometimes. Everybody, we know where the big ones are, but the little offshoots can kind of go everywhere. And there's always anomalies in different things. But that's what makes it interesting. I will say, every cyst is different. And I know from a distance they might seem very similar. The textures, the amount of fluid or not, they're always unique. The thickness of the wall, where they're at, is there a dilated pore whiner or a blackhead above it or not? It's just, to me, I find them fascinating because it's just crazy that people are walking around with these pockets under their skin that can be so easily removed and they can go on without them. I always find that fascinating. The smell of a really bad one, what would I compare it to? What's interesting, it's kind of like if you had somebody that had a really bad odor of their shoe and then you put a fish in it. Some type of mixture of that. It's actually really unique. It's so unique that I could pick it out of like 1,000 smells instantly. Like I was walking somewhere in a store and I think a guy was just kind of squeezing his neck and I happened to walk by and I was like, he was just squeezing a cyst out. Instantly, it's locked into my brain when I smell that smell, and it can be pungent or worse or not as bad, but it's still the same smell. So it's interesting. I find it doesn't gross me out at all. It's just it's a very unique smell. Yeah, kind of like stinky feet. That's what I would say. Did you go to any, medical school? I went to Western School of Medicine in Southern California, and they have a DO program, a doctor of osteopath. So they have a doctorate program there. So it is at a medical school, but the actual degree is a master's of science in physician assistant studies. So it's a master's in science instead of a doctorate, but very similar. It goes right alongside with what the doctors are learning. Even so, in my rotations, I was right beside doctors. When they did have, like, in particular, they had to deliver several babies in their OB-GYN rotation. They had to before they could get out. So they had priority. We didn't have to, but if you got to, that was a really special thing because there's a lot of doctors. So I went to it was like a state-run hospital, huge. I think they had 50 rooms. and so I was able, I think I delivered 3 babies, and it was really late at night it was like 2 a.m. There wasn't many doctors there, students that were trying to get in. And I got to deliver babies. It was amazing. It was awesome. It was, I think, one of my first rotations too. I was just like, it's just amazing. Like, I didn't want to do that, for a living, but it was great to have been able to do that. You never know when you're in a plane or a bus or something and somebody goes into labor. It's good to have in your back pocket to be able to do that. My first big juicy abscess squeeze, I don't. Trying to think back. Abscesses have always been coming in. There's just different ones. One that really sticks out is even though I did it for years, I've only been recording for 4 years, that one on the chest of that young girl, she was you might have seen it. It was like right here. It was huge. She had hidradenitis suppurativa. She was a cash patient. She went to the ER and waited 6 or 7 hours, and they wouldn't even do it for her. Like, we can't touch that. They were just, it was really extravagant looking. But when I started touching it, I could tell it was very firm, but at the very bottom, she had a little scar tissue and some thinning skin that was getting ready to pop. And I was like, I can just barely 11 blade that and push that whole thing out. I was fairly certain. And I did, and that's exactly what happened. And that was really amazing how much fluid she had in there. And then the one on the back that had the I think we called it the shamrock shake abscess. It was green fluid. And then when we did a removal later, there was almost like this Vaseline like gelatinous mass that came out. That was a very interesting too. And I think those are in my top 10 videos of views, actually. So everybody else thought those were interesting as well. Let me see. I got just a couple more minutes here. I did my first year in med school and see if we dropped out. If I live somewhere, medical PAs are used 100% go back. Yeah. It's interesting. I was there, 2007, I got in. There are PA schools popping up all over the place. And you want to make sure it's been one that's accredited and been open at least 5 or 10 years, so they have a little bit of reach into the community, so you have good access to clinical rotations. That's what I would say to people who are trying to become a PA. Oh yeah, thank you, Victoria. If you haven't checked out my fishing channel, you're missing out on a lot of fun. It is fun, and fishing channels not everybody's into fishing channels on YouTube. And they don't really grow fast. Even some of the biggest ones I've seen, and they're huge with national sponsors, have less of a following than my Mr. Popsit by a lot and way less views. So, and these are like established professional fishermen. So, but you know what? It's fun. And when I get the time, and it's possibly when I get an editor, I, in the last 10 years, have a story to tell on that channel that I think is going to make the channel really grow. But it's the story of toxic golden algae and how it devastated the state of California in 2013 to 17 and devastated almost every lake in this area, and how I was a huge part of diagnosing it correctly and fixing it. And I got video footage of the whole thing, how I did it. And it was I want to say it was a clinician's brain that asked the right questions, and I had help obviously, but I was asking the questions that a clinician would. And that's definitely what got us there, and what a fisherman would ask too. And it was that unique, being a fisherman and being a clinician, that I think got the right answer. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of what my lake is now. And just to get there, it's a great story. It's going to be told when there's an 8th day added to the week. Now, I'll get there. It'll be slow trickle, but when I have time, it's such a good story. And I got underwater footage of hand feeding the broodstock of the bass. There's just so many cool things. And then watching a lake die and come back to life. It's just unique. So I haven't seen it. I haven't seen anybody else tell the story. If they would have, I would have been able to diagnose toxic golden algae a lot easier. So I'm hoping that story will help people in the future when their lakes or their pond in their backyard gets this devastating algae. So, and that's why I'm going to tell that story. So very cool. Let me see. We'll keep going. Orthopedic job, synovial cyst, myxoid cyst. So when you're getting joint cyst, I always tell people, not a lot of primary cares maybe know this too. They think cyst, it goes to derm. And for the most part, it does. However, we don't do ganglion cysts, which come out of the wrist here a lot of times. There's so many important nerves and arteries here. That is done by an orthopedist. We do myxoid cysts on the joints of the fingers just because they're so superficial. You can numb that and drain it and do a little cautery to get that thing to suck back down in. So we do those. But pilonidal cysts at the top of the butt crack, actually, which is where people, when they're forming as a fetus, they tend to form a deep pocket. And you can drain those. We drain them. But to really get those treated, you need a deep wedge cut that then closes that sinus tract that goes down. So I'll sometimes drain them, but I send those to general surgery and then the ganglion cyst to orthopedists. But that's a good question. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you, Charlotte. Hidradenitis suppurativa. What a diagnosis, and a lot of information coming out, and just information as far as educating ERs, urgent cares, and primary cares. There are some drug companies that put a lot of money into going in and educating about this. And I have talked a little bit about it, but I really want to do a good 30 or 45-minute live on that, and I will, with some good pictures of what to look out for and how we know instantly. I can see it from across the room. I know when that is. And the big difference is folliculitis, ingrown hairs, or boils don't usually leave a deep hole. Very rarely leave a deep hole scar. The reason why hidradenitis does is because it's an autoimmune inflammatory condition of the sebaceous glands, which are deeper in the skin. They get inflamed. They erode collagen and sometimes even fat tissue. And then when it goes away, you have this kind of, indentation that's there, or a hole. So yeah, not yet. Fishing channel's not monetized yet, Arlene. Thanks for that question. We're very close. It's a slow walk, and you have to have it's so funny. You have to have 4,000 hours of viewing and in a year. But as that year progresses and you're losing views from 13 months ago and gaining views this month, it kind of is this thing that's taking away and adding as it goes. If you don't do it in the first year, it actually becomes kind of hard. The funny thing about that is I get 4,000 hours of views. I get 1 million views a day on my normal channel. I think I get 4,000 hours of views in 6 minutes or something ridiculous like that on a new upload. It just goes instantly. But my other channel, yeah. So, there's some nature stuff on there. It's not all fishing, but if you have time and you're sitting at a desk and you want to see some interesting fishing videos, click play. It helps it all. We'll get there. It'll be fun. And if I tell that story, I think I'll have more uploads about toxic golden algae. We'll probably get there. But yes, so thank you guys so much. I appreciate all of you coming here. Very cool. We got up to 65, I think. And I know a lot of notifications didn't go out. So we usually get 100 or 150 on here. But they'll see it. And then they can come and watch it. I'm going to link everything on here from the other video. And then I'll link the actual procedure video for the one I showed in the beginning. But man, does 40 minutes go by fast? Gosh, that was quick. So I'll probably have maybe a little date night tonight with Mrs. Popsit here. I'm going to watch a football game. Well, it's a mini date. It's a family date. But I hope you all have a great weekend. Thanks for popping by, and we will talk again soon. Have a good night.